Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the massive viewing deck aboard the Council Station Zenith. The station was a marvel of alien engineering, stretching over 50 kilometers across and housing representatives from 47 different species. Through the transparent aluminum walls, she could see the ships of the Hegemony Council fleet. Sleek vessels with hulls that shimmered with energy shields, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. Elena had been coming to these stations for 12 years now. 12 years of requesting permission for humanity to expand beyond their tiny corner of space. 12 years of being told no. The Galactic Hegemony Council believed they were protecting the galaxy. The 5 founding species had formed their alliance over 3,000 years ago. The Cathtar brought their mastery of energy manipulation. The Zephyrians contributed their advanced shield technology. The Malari provided their skill with gravitational fields. The Vex offered their biological expertise. And the ancient progenitors shared their wisdom about governing lesser species. Humanity was considered one of those lesser species. Elena walked through the corridors toward the main council chamber. The walls were covered in symbols representing the long history of galactic peace under hegemony rule. There were no human symbols on these walls. Humanity had only made contact with the greater galaxy 50 years ago, and the council still treated them like children who might hurt themselves with dangerous toys. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from dozens of species sat in curved rows that stretched up toward the ceiling. At the center, the 5 founding members sat on raised platforms that floated above the other delegates. Their technology made them appear larger than life, which Elena suspected was the point. High Counselor Vexthal of the progenitors called the session to order. His species looked almost like humans, except for their pale blue skin and the fact that they lived for over 1,000 years. His voice echoed through translation devices that every species wore. Today we hear another request from the human delegation, Vexthal announced. Captain Vasquez, you may speak, Elena stepped forward. She had given this same speech dozens of times before, but she never gave up hope that something might change. Honored Council, humanity requests permission to establish colonies beyond the Outer Rim territories. Our population has grown beyond what our current worlds can support. We also request access to improved faster-than-light drive technology to make such expansion possible. A wave of what could only be described as amused chittering came from the Cathtar section. These lizard-like beings found human ambition entertaining. Their representative, Commander Sketh, stood up. The humans want to expand again, Sketh said, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. Perhaps they have forgotten what happened the last time a young species was given advanced technology too quickly. Elena knew what he was referring to. 800 years ago, a species called the Rakari had been granted similar privileges. They had used the technology to build weapons and tried to conquer their neighbors. The Council had been forced to destroy their entire civilization. It was a cautionary tale they loved to remind humanity about. The Rakari situation was unfortunate, Elena replied carefully, but humanity has proven itself peaceful. We have never shown aggression toward any council member species. Counselor Zephlin of the Zephyrians floated down from her platform. Her species looked like tall, graceful beings made of flowing energy, though Elena knew they had solid bodies underneath their light-based appearance. Young Captain, Zephlin said, her voice like wind chimes. Your species has existed in space for barely 50 years. We have been watching the stars for millennia. You must trust that we know what is best for galactic stability. Elena bit back her frustration. With respect, Counselor, our scientists believe we have contributions to make to galactic society. Our research into kinetic acceleration technology could benefit everyone. This caused an actual laugh from the Malari representative. The bear-like aliens found human science primitive at best. Kinetic weapons? Ambassador Throck rumbled. How charmingly backward. Energy weapons made such things obsolete 3,000 years ago. The session continued as it always did. Elena presented humanity's case. The council members politely explained why humanity was not ready for greater responsibility. They offered small concessions. Perhaps humanity could establish one new mining colony, or maybe they could have access to slightly improved communication equipment. Elena accepted what little they offered, as she always did. There was no point in making enemies. She thanked the council for their wisdom and their time. As she walked back to her ship, Elena activated a small communication device hidden in her jacket. It looked like a standard Council-approved translator, but it contained technology the Council had never seen. "Report," came a voice through her earpiece. "Same as always," Elena said quietly. "They denied the expansion request and the FTL upgrade. They're keeping us contained." "Understood. Project status?" Elena glanced around to make sure she was alone in the docking bay. "Construction Ship 7 finished its work last week. The Ragnarok's End is now fully operational. That makes 3 complete with 2 more in final assembly." "Excellent. How much longer do you estimate we have?" Elena looked out at the Council fleet ships docked nearby. So proud, so powerful, so utterly unprepared for what was coming. "Intelligence suggests the Devourers will reach the Outer Rim in 18 months. The Council's border fleets won't last a week against them. Then we continue as planned. The Council must never know what we've built until the time is right." Elena smiled grimly. "Understood, Admiral. I'll maintain the illusion that we're helpless little humans who need their protection." She cut the connection and began the long journey back to human space. On her ship, she had reports to file with the Council about humanity's gratitude for their continued guidance. She would write about how humans understood their place in the galactic order and had no ambitions beyond what the Council deemed appropriate. It was all a lie. Of course, for 30 years humanity had been playing the role of the obedient junior species. They attended Council sessions, asked for small favors, and accepted whatever scraps they were given. Meanwhile, in the depths of their home system's asteroid belt, they had been building something the galaxy had never seen. The asteroid mining operations were real enough. Humanity did need the resources, but they were not building simple mining stations or even defensive platforms. Hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids, protected by stealth technology that made them invisible to Council sensors, humanity was constructing ships the size of planets. The Council believed energy weapons were the height of military technology. They were wrong. Humanity had learned that the greatest threat to galactic peace would not be defeated by plasma cannons or particle beams. The enemy that was coming would absorb energy attacks and use them to grow stronger, but kinetic weapons, old-fashioned, projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed would work just fine. Elena's ship, the diplomatic courier, was itself more advanced than anything in the Council fleet. Its hull was made from materials that had been developed in the secret shipyards. Its engines could outrun any Council vessel. Its sensors could detect ships light years away. And its weapons, though hidden, could destroy a Council dreadnought with a single shot. The Council thought they were protecting the galaxy from dangerous young species like humanity. They had no idea that humanity was actually protecting the galaxy from something far worse than the Council could imagine. As Elena's ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, she thought about the irony of the situation. The Council saw themselves as wise guardians keeping order in the galaxy. But when the real test came, when an enemy arrived that their ancient weapons could not stop, it would be the primitive humans with their backward kinetic weapons who would save them all. The galaxy was not ready for what was coming. But humanity was, and the Council would never see it coming until it was far too late to stop them. The emergency session aboard Council Station Zenith was unlike anything Elena had witnessed in her 12 years of diplomatic service. Representatives from every member species had gathered, their usual calm replaced by barely controlled panic. The great chamber that normally echoed with dignified debate now buzzed with fearful whispers in 47 different languages. High Counselor Vexthal stood at the center of the chamber, his normally composed expression showing cracks of worry. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the edge of the galaxy, where something impossible was happening. 3 days ago, Vexthal announced, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. Our long-range observation posts in the Kepler void went silent. Yesterday, we lost contact with the entire Arcturus sector. This morning, the hegemony fleet stationed at Rigel Prime stopped responding to all communications. The display zoomed in on the affected areas. Where once there had been stars, planets, and thriving civilizations, now there was only empty space. Not the natural emptiness between systems, but a complete void where matter itself seemed to have been erased. Elena felt a chill run down her spine, though she kept her expression carefully neutral. Humanity had been expecting this moment for decades, but seeing it actually happen was still terrifying. Commander Sketh of the Keth Tar delegation stood up, his reptilian features twisted with confusion. How is this possible? Entire star systems do not simply disappear. Our sensors show no explosion debris, no residual energy signatures. It is as if they never existed. Counselor Zeflin's energy form flickered with agitation. The progenitor's ancient archives speak of something like this, but we believe them to be myths. Legends of devourers from beyond the galactic rim, entities that consumed not just planets but entire star systems. The archives are not myths, Vexthal said grimly. We had hoped they would never return, but it appears our galaxy's cycle of peace has come to an end. The devourers are real and they have found us. Admiral Throck of the Molari delegation stood, his massive bear-like frame towering over the other representatives. What do we know about these devourers? How do we fight them? The holographic display changed, showing grainy images captured by the last surviving sensor probe before it too had been consumed. The images were difficult to make out, strange geometric shapes that seemed to bend light around them, structures that defied physics as the Council understood it. Our analysts believe they are machine intelligences from another galaxy, Vexthal explained. They appear to be self-replicating constructs that consume matter to build more of themselves. Each system they devour makes them stronger and more numerous. Elena leaned forward slightly. This matched everything humanity's deep space reconnaissance had learned about the approaching threat. For 20 years, human scout ships using advanced stealth technology had been monitoring the Devourer's approach from the intergalactic void. The Council had no idea that humanity possessed such capabilities. What weapons do they use? Asked the representative from the Altarian Collective, a species known for their military expertise. That is the most disturbing aspect, Vexthal replied. They do not appear to use weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, they somehow convert matter directly into energy, then use that energy to power their expansion. Our energy-based weapons seem to have no effect on them whatsoever. A murmur of fear rippled through the chamber. Every major Council military technology was based on energy manipulation. Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion warheads, all of it relied on converting matter to energy and directing that energy at targets. How long do we have? Elena asked, speaking for the first time during the session. All eyes turned to her. As the representative of a junior species, she was not expected to contribute to military discussions. But the circumstances were too dire for normal protocol. Based on their current rate of advance, Vexthal said after a moment, they will reach the Outer Rim territories in approximately 14 months. The core worlds of the Council have perhaps 2 years before they arrive here. Elena nodded, keeping her expression grave but not panicked. Internally, she was calculating. Humanity's intelligence had estimated 18 months to the Outer Rim. The Devourers were moving faster than expected. Admiral Throck stood again. I request permission to deploy the hegemony's first battle fleet to the affected region. We must establish a defensive line and study these Devourers more closely. Granted, Vexthal said immediately. Take whatever ships you need. We cannot allow these entities to penetrate deeper into Council space. As the session continued, Elena listened to the military planning with growing concern. The Council's strategy was based entirely on energy-based warfare. They spoke of overwhelming the Devourers with massive plasma bombardments, of using gravitational fields to disrupt their formations, of deploying energy shields to protect their fleets. None of it would work. Humanity's research had proven that the Devourers actually fed on energy attacks, growing stronger with each assault. The Council's fleet would not just fail to stop them, it would actually help them grow more powerful. When the session finally ended, Elena made her way back to her ship as quickly as possible without appearing to flee. Once aboard, she activated her secure communication system. Admiral Chen, this is Vasquez. Priority Alpha communication. The response came immediately. Go ahead, Captain. The Devourers have arrived ahead of schedule. The Council has lost 3 star systems already. They're deploying their first battle fleet to establish a defensive line. There was a long pause on the other end. Understood. How long until they realize their weapons are useless? Elena thought about the proud Council military commanders she had just seen, so confident in their superior technology. They'll need to engage the Devourers directly before they'll believe it. I estimate 2 to 3 weeks before the first fleet is completely destroyed. That matches our projections. Are you ready to begin Phase 2? Elena looked out at the Council fleet ships docked around Zenith Station. So many proud, ancient vessels that would soon be nothing but debris. Admiral, respectfully, are we sure this is the right approach? These people will die because we're not warning them about what they're facing. Captain? Admiral Chen's voice was gentle but firm. You know why we cannot reveal ourselves yet. If the Council knew what we had built, they would demand control of our fleet. They would use our ships the same way they plan to use their own, in direct energy-based attacks that will only feed the Devourers. Our only chance to save the galaxy is to let them fail first. Elena closed her eyes. She understood the logic, but that did not make it easier to accept. I understand, sir. What are my orders? Continue playing your role. Express appropriate concern about humanity's safety. Request evacuation assistance for our Outer Rim colonies. Make it look like we're as helpless and frightened as any other junior species. And our fleet? The Terra Invictus, New Olympus, and Ragnarok's End are fully operational. Construction ships 5 and 6 will have the remaining 2 vessels ready within 3 months. We'll be prepared to engage the Devourers as soon as the Council's fleet has been eliminated. Elena felt a weight settle on her shoulders. Sir, the Council fleet represents 3,000 years of military advancement. Billions of beings will die when it's destroyed. Are we absolutely certain our approach will work? Captain, our kinetic weapons testing has been conclusive. Physical projectiles can penetrate Devourer hulls and disrupt their matter conversion systems. Our gravitational manipulators can actually tear their structures apart. Instead of just feeding them energy, we have the only weapons in the galaxy that can stop them. But the price of revealing ourselves too early would be the entire galaxy, Elena. You know this. The Council's arrogance and reliance on energy weapons will doom them, but their sacrifice will give us the chance to save everyone else. Elena ended the communication and sat alone in her quarters. Outside her window, she could see the Council fleet preparing for deployment. Admiral Throck's flagship, the Molari dreadnought Thunderbear, was a magnificent sight. Its armor gleamed with energy-absorbing alloys, and its weapons could level a continent. In 2 weeks, it would be nothing but cosmic dust. Humanity had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Hidden in their asteroid belt shipyards, they had built weapons the galaxy had never imagined. Planet-sized battleships armed with kinetic accelerators that could hurl asteroids at near light speed. Gravitational weapons that could tear apart molecular bonds. Defensive systems based on physical armor instead of energy shields. The Council saw humanity as primitive because they still used obsolete kinetic weapons. They had no idea that those primitive weapons were exactly what the galaxy needed. Soon, the truth would be revealed. But first, the Council's fleet had to learn the hard way that their advanced energy weapons were worse than useless against the Devourers. Elena only hoped that when the time came to reveal humanity's secret, there would still be a galaxy left to save. Admiral Throck's confident smile had lasted exactly 14 hours. Into the first battle with the Devourers, Elena watched the tactical displays. From her position in the Council Station's Emergency Command Center, she had been granted observer status for humanity's protection, though she suspected the Council simply wanted all species to witness their inevitable victory. The irony was bitter. The hegemony's first battle fleet had been magnificent to behold. 300 vessels representing the finest military technology of 5 ancient civilizations, dreadnoughts the size of cities, their hulls crackling with energy shields, cruisers armed with plasma cannons that could burn through a planet's crust, fighter squadrons whose particle beams could slice through asteroids. For the first few hours, it had looked like the Council's confidence was justified. Their energy weapons struck the Devourer constructs with devastating force. Explosions lit up the dark space like new suns being born. Then the Devourers had started growing larger. How is this possible? Admiral Throck was demanding on the communication channel. His voice, once filled with proud certainty, now carried notes of desperation. We are hitting them with enough firepower to destroy a moon, but they are not being damaged. Elena could have told him exactly what was happening. Each energy blast that struck a Devourer construct was being absorbed and converted into raw matter, which the machines then used to build more of themselves. The Council's weapons were not destroying their enemy, they were feeding it. High Counselor Vexthal stood beside her, his ancient face pale with disbelief. This cannot be happening. Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. We have kept peace for 3,000 years with this technology. Maybe, Elena said carefully. This enemy is different from anything the galaxy has faced before. On the displays, the battle was becoming a massacre. The Devourer constructs had grown to massive size. their dark hulls now bristling with new appendages that seemed to be weapons of their own. When they fired, they did not use energy beams. Instead, they released waves of something that simply deleted sections of space itself. Council ships that were caught in these deletion waves simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. One moment a proud dreadnought was there. The next moment there was only empty void. "Admiral Throck, withdraw your forces immediately," Vexthal ordered through the communication system. "We must preserve what remains of the fleet." "Negative, High Counselor," came Throck's reply. His voice was steady despite the disaster unfolding around him. "If we retreat now, these entities will follow us to the core worlds. We must stop them here." Elena watched as the Malari admiral ordered his remaining ships into a final desperate assault. They concentrated all their firepower on a single devourer construct, hoping that overwhelming force might break through whatever was protecting it. The result was catastrophic. The massive energy bombardment was absorbed so quickly that the devourer construct visibly grew to twice its original size in a matter of minutes. When it retaliated, the deletion wave it produced was large enough to consume Admiral Throck's flagship and 30 other vessels in a single pulse. The silence in the command center was deafening. "The fleet is lost," Counselor Zephlin whispered, her energy form flickering with grief. 300 ships gone in less than a day. Elena activated her hidden communication device. The council members were too shocked to notice her subtle movements. "Admiral Chen, this is Vasquez. The council fleet has been destroyed. The Devourers are continuing their advance toward the outer rim." "Understood, Captain. How are the council members responding?" Elena glanced around the command center. Some species representatives were weeping. Others sat in stunned silence. A few were arguing about what to do next, their voices rising in panic. "They're in shock," Elena reported. "They can't understand how their weapons could be completely ineffective." "Perfect. Are you ready to begin the revelation?" Elena took a deep breath. After 30 years of hiding humanity's true capabilities, the moment had finally come. "Standing by for your signal, Admiral." She cut the communication and turned back to the tactical displays. The Devourers were advancing steadily through the debris field that had once been the galaxy's most powerful fleet. In less than 12 hours, they would reach humanity's outer rim colonies. "High Counselor," Elena said, stepping forward. "I need to contact my government immediately. Humanity's colonies in the outer rim need to be evacuated before those things arrive." Vexthal nodded absently. "Of course, Captain. Use whatever communication systems you need." Elena moved to a private communication booth and activated her ship's long-range transmitter. To the council observers, it would look like she was making a desperate call to request evacuation assistance. In reality, she was about to reveal the greatest secret in galactic history. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Vasquez aboard Council Station Zenith. I am formally requesting immediate assistance for our threatened colonies." "Request acknowledged, Captain," came the reply over the open channel. "Be advised that Hegemony Command has authorized the deployment of our defensive fleet. All vessels are to prepare for immediate departure." Elena smiled slightly at the theater they were performing. Admiral Chen was speaking as if humanity's defensive fleet was some small collection of outdated ships that might be able to evacuate a few thousand colonists. "Admiral, how many ships can you spare for evacuation duty?" "We are deploying our full available fleet, Captain. 3 vessels should be sufficient for the task." 3 vessels. Elena could imagine the council representatives rolling their eyes at humanity's pathetic contribution to the crisis. 3 small ships to evacuate colonies when the greatest fleet in galactic history had just been destroyed. They had no idea what was coming. "Admiral, please confirm the identity of the vessels being deployed." "Confirmed, Captain. Terra Invictus, New Olympus, and Ragnarok's End are departing from Asteroid Belt Station 7 and should reach the outer rim in 6 hours. Elena ended the communication and returned to the command center. The council representatives were still staring at the tactical displays, watching the Devourers advance through space that had been swept clean of all resistance. "The human government is sending evacuation ships," Elena announced. 3 vessels from our home system." Counselor Zephlin turned to her with something that might have been pity. "Captain, I appreciate your species' desire to help, but 3 ships cannot possibly evacuate entire colonies. Perhaps we should focus on getting your people to our fortified core worlds." "I think our ships might be more capable than you expect," Elena said quietly. 6 hours later, The first indication that something extraordinary was happening came from the long-range sensors monitoring the outer rim. A technician at one of the sensor stations called out in confusion. "Hi, Counselor. I am reading massive gravitational distortions near the Kepler system. The signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Vexthal moved to the sensor station. "Show me." The main display shifted to show the region where the Devourers were approaching humanity's outermost colonies. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then space itself seemed to tear open. What emerged from the distortions defied comprehension. The objects were so large that the sensors initially categorized them as small moons. But moons did not move with purpose, and they certainly did not bristle with weapon emplacements that covered their entire surface. "What are those things?" Zephlin whispered. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady and proud. "Those are the Terra Invictus, New Olympus, and Ragnarok's End, the human planetary defense fleet." The command center erupted in shocked silence, then a dozen voices speaking at once. Representatives from every species stared at the displays in disbelief. The three human vessels were massive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each one was over 12,000 kilometers in diameter, larger than most planets. Their hulls were dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and they moved through space with a grace that seemed impossible for objects of such size. "This is impossible," Vexthal said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No species has the technology to build ships of this size. The gravitational forces alone would tear them apart." "Actually," Elena said with a slight smile, "we solved that problem about 20 years ago. Turns out kinetic engineering is more advanced than most people think." As they watched, the human vessels took up positions between the Devourers and the human colonies. For the first time since the crisis began, the advancing enemy encountered something that did not immediately flee or die. "Captain," Vexthal said slowly, "what exactly has your species been building out there?" Elena looked around the command center at all the representatives who had spent decades treating humanity like children playing with dangerous toys. "Hi, Counselor. Humanity has been preparing for this day for 30 years. We knew the Devourers were coming long before they reached our galaxy." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we have been watching them. Our deep space reconnaissance has been tracking their movement through intergalactic space for decades. We knew that energy-based weapons would be useless against them, so we developed something different." On the display, the first Devourer constructs were approaching the human vessels. Elena watched as weapons batteries across the surface of Terra Invictus began to track their targets. What kind of weapons do those ships carry? The battle for the outer rim lasted 3 days and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Elena stood in the Council Command Center, surrounded by representatives from 47 species who could barely speak. For 3 days they had watched humanity's 3 planet-sized ships systematically destroy Devourer constructs that had shrugged off the combined firepower of the galaxy's greatest fleet. It was not just the size of the human vessels that shocked them, though that was certainly overwhelming. It was the way they fought. The Terra Invictus, New Olympus, and Ragnarok's End did not fight like ships. They fought like mobile battle stations, each one carrying enough firepower to threaten entire fleets. Their kinetic accelerators could hurl asteroid-sized projectiles across light years with pinpoint accuracy. Their gravitational manipulators could tear Devourer constructs apart at the molecular level. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the swarm of smaller vessels that had emerged from the planet ships like angry insects. "Captain Vasquez," High Counselor Vexthal said quietly, "exactly how many ships does humanity possess?" Elena watched the tactical display as another wave of human fighters engaged the Devourers. The fighters were each the size of Council destroyers, and there were thousands of them. Each fighter appeared to be more advanced than the finest ships in the hegemony fleet. "The 3 planetary battleships each carry approximately 2,000 support vessels," Elena replied. "Fighters, bombers, assault ships, and specialty craft. Each support vessel is crewed by between 50 and 200 humans." The math was staggering. If Elena was telling the truth, humanity had deployed over 6,000 ships to this battle, each one apparently superior to anything the Council possessed. "And those were just the support craft. How is this possible?" Counselor Zephlin asked, her energy form flickering with agitation. "Your species has only been in space for 50 years. How could you build such advanced vessels?" Elena smiled slightly. "Counselor, Humanity has been in space for over 400 years. We reached our own moon in 1969 by your calendar. We established our first interstellar colonies in 2157. When we made contact with the Council 50 years ago, we were already a spacefaring civilization, with colonies in 12 star systems. But our first contact, protocols, Vexthal began, indicated that humanity was a primitive species just discovering faster-than-light travel, Elena finished. Yes, that is what we wanted you to believe. We studied Council first contact procedures carefully and gave you exactly the impression you expected to have. The revelation hit the command center like a physical blow. Every species present understood the implications immediately. Humanity had deliberately presented themselves as primitive and harmless, while secretly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Why? Asked Ambassador Krell of the Vegan Confederation. Why hide your true capabilities? You could have joined the Council as an equal member species. Elena's expression hardened. Could we? In 50 years of diplomatic contact, humanity has been denied every request for territorial expansion, technology sharing, or meaningful participation in galactic affairs. We were classified as a developing species and told that we needed Council guidance to prevent us from becoming dangerous. She gestured toward the tactical display, where human forces were methodically destroying Devourer, constructs with weapons the Council had never imagined. The Council's policies were based on the assumption that young species are inherently dangerous and must be controlled. But you never considered that maybe, just maybe, one of those young species might be the key to defending the galaxy against a threat you could not handle. On the display, the battle was entering its final phase. The Devourers had adapted their tactics several times, but each adaptation had been countered by human forces. The alien construct's ability to absorb energy and convert it to matter was useless against kinetic weapons. Their deletion waves could not affect targets that were constantly moving at relativistic speeds. Their self-replication systems failed when their hulls were physically torn apart. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system, addressing the Council for the first time. High Counselor Vexthal, this is Admiral Chen Wei of the Human Defense Fleet. I am requesting permission to address the Galactic Council. Vexthal looked around the command center at his fellow council members. Several were still staring at the displays in shock. Others were engaged in heated, whispered conversations with their aides. All of them looked like their understanding of galactic politics had been completely overturned. Permission granted, Admiral, Vexthal said finally. The main display shifted to show Admiral Chen aboard the bridge of Terra Invictus. Elena had worked with Chen for years, but seeing him in his true environment was still impressive. The bridge around him was vast, filled with holographic displays and control stations that managed weapons capable of destroying planets. Honored Council, Chen began, I want to address some questions I'm sure you have about humanity's actions over the past 30 years. Admiral, interrupted Commander Sketh of the Kethtar, your species has been deceiving the entire galaxy. How can we trust anything you say? Chen nodded calmly. Commander, you are correct that we have been deceptive about our capabilities. But consider our position. When humanity first made contact with the Council, we were immediately classified as a junior species and subjected to restrictions designed to limit our growth and development. Every attempt to negotiate for equal treatment was denied. Those restrictions exist for good reason. Admiral Throck's replacement Commander Brath interjected. Young species often become aggressive when given advanced technology too quickly. And yet, Chen replied, humanity has existed as an advanced spacefaring civilization for 4 centuries without conquering our neighbors or threatening galactic peace. Meanwhile, the species you consider advanced and trustworthy just lost their entire fleet because they refused to consider that their weapons might be ineffective against a new type of threat. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Several council members started to respond angrily, but Vexthal raised his hand for silence. Admiral, what is it that you want from the Council? Chen's expression became serious. High Counselor, the Devourer threat is not over. What you have seen here is only the advance force of a much larger invasion. Our deep space reconnaissance indicates that the main Devourer fleet contains over 10,000 constructs, each one larger than the ones we just defeated. A chill ran through the command center. The constructs they had just watched being destroyed had been able to shrug off the firepower of the galaxy's greatest fleet. The idea that there were 10,000 larger ones coming was almost incomprehensible. Humanity possesses the only technology that can effectively fight the Devourers, Chen continued. But our current fleet of 3 planetary battleships and their support craft will not be sufficient to defend the entire galaxy. We need the Council's cooperation to build additional vessels and train crews from other species to operate kinetic-based weapons. You want us to abandon 3,000 years of military doctrine and adopt your primitive weapon systems? Commander Brath asked incredulously. Elena stepped forward. Commander, would you prefer to keep your advanced energy weapons and watch your worlds be consumed? Because that is the alternative. On the tactical display, the last of the Devourer constructs was being torn apart by gravitational forces generated by the Ragnarok's end. The immediate threat to the outer rim was over, but everyone in the command center understood that this was only the beginning. Vexithal was quiet for a long moment, studying the displays that showed human forces securing the battlefield. Finally, he looked directly at Admiral Chen's image. Admiral, what would you need from the Council to prepare for the main Devourer fleet? Complete access to Council industrial capacity, shared intelligence about galactic defensive positions, and the authority to coordinate military operations across all member species. Chen replied without hesitation. In exchange, humanity will share our kinetic weapons technology and gravitational manipulation techniques. With any species willing to learn, that would essentially make humanity the dominant military power in the galaxy, Counselor Zephlin observed. Counselor, Elena said quietly, humanity already is the dominant military power in the galaxy. The question is whether we will use that power to save everyone, or whether the Council will force us to watch the galaxy burn while arguing about politics. Vexthal closed his eyes for a moment, and Elena could see the weight of 3,000 years of progenitor leadership pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his expression was resigned but determined. The Council will convene an emergency session to discuss these proposals, he announced. Admiral Chen, humanity will have our answer within 48 hours. As the communication ended and the various species representatives began filing out of the command center, Elena remained behind. She looked out at the tactical display, where human ships were beginning the long process of salvaging useful materials from the destroyed Devourer constructs. The secret was out, humanity's hidden. 6 months after the Battle of the Outer Rim, Elena stood once again on the observation deck of Council Station Zenith. But everything had changed. The station itself had been transformed. Where once there had been elegant alien architecture designed to showcase the superiority of Council technology, now there were practical human modifications. Kinetic weapon emplacements dotted the hull. Gravitational field generators provided defense against the Devourer's deletion waves. Most striking of all, the station now orbited not in empty space but around one of humanity's newest constructions. Valhalla Station was humanity's 5th planetary battleship, and the first to be built with full Council cooperation. Its 12,000-kilometer hull incorporated design elements from all major species. Kethtar energy management systems powered its weapons. Zephyrian shield technology protected its critical systems. Malari gravitational expertise enhanced its movement capabilities. Vex knowledge of biological systems supported its massive crew, and progenitor wisdom guided its strategic coordination capabilities, but at its heart it was still a human vessel. Its primary weapons were kinetic accelerators. Its armor was physical matter, not energy shields, and its command structure was based on human military doctrine. Elena watched as the latest batch of Council officers reported for duty aboard the Terra Invictus. They came from a dozen different species, all of them learning to operate weapons their governments had once considered primitive. The irony was not lost on her. Captain Vasquez, the Council is ready for you. Elena turned to see Commander Brath of the Molari approaching. The bear-like alien had been one of the most vocal opponents of cooperation with humanity 6 months ago. Now he wore the insignia of a human fleet officer and carried kinetic weapons that his own people had designed based on human specifications. Thank you, Commander. How is the new Molari contingent adapting to training? Brath's expression was complicated. Better than expected, though it pains me to admit it. Your weapons require a different mindset than our traditional energy-based systems. Less finesse, more raw calculation. But the results speak for themselves. They walked together toward the council chamber. The corridors were busier than Elena had ever seen them, filled with beings from across the galaxy, working together on projects that would have been unthinkable before the Devourer threat. "Commander, can I ask you something?" Elena said as they walked. "Of course. Do you regret the way things changed? The Council held power for 3,000 years. Now that authority has essentially been transferred to humanity." Brath was quiet for a moment. "Captain, my species pride ourselves on our practical nature. 6 months ago, I would have died rather than admit that the Malari military was inferior to anything humans could build. But then I watched your 3 ships destroy threats that had consumed our greatest fleet, without taking a single casualty." He stopped walking and looked directly at her. "Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. The main Devourer fleet will arrive in less than a year. When that happens, I want to be standing beside the most effective military force in the galaxy, regardless of which species built it." They reached the council chamber, but it was not the same dignified assembly Elena remembered. The circular seating arrangement had been replaced with a more practical configuration, focused on tactical displays and communication systems. Representatives still came from every member species, but now they worked as part of integrated teams rather than as separate delegations protecting their individual interests. At the center of the chamber, Admiral Chen was briefing the Council on the latest intelligence from deep space reconnaissance. The main Devourer fleet consists of approximately 12,000 constructs, Chen was saying, with the largest individual units measuring over 50,000 kilometers in diameter. They will reach the galactic rim in 8 months. Elena took her place at the human delegation table, though the distinction between species delegations had become largely ceremonial. The real decision-making now happened in the integrated command structure that Chen had established. High Counselor Vexthal, now serving as the civilian coordinator for the joint defense effort, stood to address the assembly. "Admiral Chen, what is the current status of our defensive preparations?" "We now have 7 operational planetary battleships," Chen replied, "with 3 more under construction and expected to be ready before the Devourer arrival. Each ship is crewed by personnel from multiple species and equipped with hybrid technology, combining the best innovations from across the galaxy." The holographic display showed the current positions of humanity's fleet. The original 3 ships, Terra Invictus, New Olympus, and Ragnarok's End, were positioned at key defensive points throughout Council space. The newer vessels were distributed to protect the most vulnerable worlds and industrial centers. In addition, Chen continued, "We have successfully converted or constructed over 15,000 support vessels, using Council industrial capacity. Every major shipyard in the galaxy is now producing kinetic-based weapon systems." Elena smiled at the understatement. The transformation of galactic military industry had been the most massive undertaking in recorded history. Entire species had retooled their manufacturing capabilities to produce weapons based on human designs. Worlds that had built energy cannons for millennia were now constructing kinetic accelerators and gravitational manipulators. "What about crew training?" asked the Altarian representative. "More challenging than ship construction," Chen admitted. "Operating kinetic weapons requires different tactical thinking than energy-based systems. However, we have established training programs on 17 worlds and graduation rates are improving steadily." Elena remembered the early days of the joint training programs. Council officers who had spent their careers mastering the elegant precision of energy weapons struggled with the raw physics of kinetic combat. But necessity was a powerful teacher, and most species had adapted faster than anyone expected. "Admiral," Vexthal said, "there is one issue we must address directly. Several member species have expressed concern about humanity's long-term intentions. They fear that once the Devourer threat is eliminated, humans will use their military superiority to dominate the galaxy." A hush fell over the chamber. This was the question that everyone had been thinking about, but no one had been willing to voice directly. Chen stood quietly for a moment, then activated a control that brought up a new display. It showed the current command structure of the Joint Defense Fleet. "Counselor, I understand these concerns. Let me address them directly. Yes, humanity currently possesses the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Yes, our ships are larger and more powerful than anything the Council previously imagined. And yes, we could use this advantage to impose our will on other species." He paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of worlds. But consider what we have actually done with this power. Instead of conquering council space, we have shared our technology. Instead of replacing your governments, we have worked within your existing political structures. Instead of demanding tribute or territorial concessions, we have asked only for cooperation in defending against a common threat. Elena felt a surge of pride at Chen's words. This had been humanity's choice from the beginning, not to rule the galaxy but to protect it. Furthermore, Chen continued, humanity's military advantage is temporary. We are actively training officers from every council species to operate our weapon systems. We are sharing the manufacturing specifications for our most advanced technology. In 10 years, any species that chooses to do so will be capable of building planetary battleships equal to our own. But why? Asked Commander Sketh of the Kethtar. Why give away such an overwhelming advantage? Elena stood up, feeling that this question required a human perspective rather than a military one. Commander, humanity spent 30 years watching the Council treat us as children who could not be trusted with advanced technology. We know what it feels like to be considered inferior and dangerous. We will never do that to another species. She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the joint fleet. More importantly, the galaxy is a big place with many threats. Humanity cannot protect everything alone, nor should we have to. A galaxy where every species has the means to defend itself and their neighbors is much safer than one where a single species bears all responsibility for galactic security. Vexithal nodded slowly. So humanity's position is that your current military dominance is intended to be temporary. Exactly, Chen replied. Our goal is to create a galaxy where every species has access to effective defensive technology and the knowledge to use it. The Hegemony Council's old system of restricting technology to maintain political control was always destined to fail when a real threat emerged. And if other species eventually build fleets that rival humanity's power, asked the Vegan representative, Elena smiled. Then we will have succeeded in our objective. A galaxy full of strong, independent species working together is exactly what we want to achieve. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this. For 3,000 years, galactic politics had been based on the assumption that military power meant political dominance. Humanity was proposing something unprecedented,